The Zirathi hegemony had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their empire stretched across 10,000 worlds. Their warships darkened the skies of 100 conquered species. No one challenged them. No one dared. The very idea of rebellion had been crushed so many times that most species had forgotten what freedom meant. On the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, Fleet Commander Thyros watched the endless stars through the observation window. He had served the hegemony for 200 years. He had burned worlds. He had crushed uprisings. He had never known defeat, because defeat was something that happened to lesser species. The alarm changed everything. A ship had appeared near the capital system. It had not come through any known jump gate. It had not traveled through hyperspace. One moment there was empty void. The next moment, a ship existed where nothing had been before. Thyros studied the readings on his display. The ship was small, perhaps a third the size of a standard Zirathi cruiser. Its hull was dark, almost black, and it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The ship's design matched nothing in the hegemony's vast database. No species in known space had ever built anything like it. "Scan it," Thyros ordered. His officers tried. Their instruments returned nothing useful. The hull composition was unknown. The power readings made no sense. The ship seemed to exist in a way that their technology could not understand. "It is not responding to communication," one officer reported. "It simply waits." Thyros felt something he had not felt in decades. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was there. Uncertainty. He pushed it down and made his decision. Send 70 warships. Surround it. If it does not identify itself, destroy it. The warfleet launched within the hour. 70 of the hegemony's finest vessels, each one capable of burning a continent. They crossed the system in formation, weapons charged, shields raised. They expected the strange ship to flee. They expected it to beg for mercy. They expected it to be just another primitive explorer from some forgotten corner of the galaxy. The ship did none of these things. It simply waited. When the warfleet surrounded it completely, blocking every possible escape route, the strange ship finally responded. It broadcast a single message in perfect High Zirathi, the sacred language of the hegemony's ruling class. "We are humanity. We come seeking the ones who took our colony world. You have 7 cycles to produce them, or we will assume complicity." Commander Virith, who led the warfleet, read the message 3 times. He did not understand it. No species called humanity existed in hegemony records. No colony world had been taken by anyone the hegemony knew of. The message made no sense. "This is Commander Virith of the Zirathi hegemony," he broadcast in response. "You are surrounded. Identify yourselves properly and explain your presence, or you will be destroyed." The strange ship did not answer. It hung in space, silent and dark, surrounded by 70 warships that could end it in seconds. Virith reported to Fleet Commander Thyros. Thyros reported to the High Council. The Council discussed the matter for 3 days. They examined the message. They searched their records. They found nothing about humanity or any stolen colony. High Counselor Matriarch Savalis, the most powerful being in the hegemony, gave her judgment. "It is a bluff. Some desperate minor species seeking to frighten us with strange technology and mysterious words. Ignore it. If it has not departed in 7 cycles, destroy it." The council agreed. They had ruled for 12,000 years. They had seen countless species try to challenge them. All had failed. This humanity would be no different. The 7 cycles passed. The strange ship did not move. It did not communicate again. It simply waited, surrounded by warships, as if it had all the time in the universe. On the 7th cycle, Commander Virith prepared to give the order to fire. His weapons officers locked targets. His crew stood ready. Victory would be easy. Then the ship vanished. It did not jump. It did not accelerate. It was there, and then it was simply not there. Space folded around it like water flowing around a stone, and the ship stepped somewhere else. Somewhere beyond their instruments. Somewhere beyond their understanding. Virith stared at empty space. His readings showed nothing. The ship had left no trace, no energy signature, no path to follow. It had simply ceased to exist in that location. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then one of the younger officers said what everyone was thinking. What just happened? No one had an answer. On Zerith Prime, the homeworld of the hegemony, Fleet Commander Thyrus received the report. He read it carefully. He read it again. Then he called for his senior analysts. The ship scanned our fleet before it departed, one analyst reported, her voice troubled. We detected unusual energy patterns in the final moment. We believe it was gathering information. What kind of information? Thyrus asked. Everything. Ship designs. Weapon frequencies. Shield harmonics. Communication codes. Crew positions. Biological data. The analyst paused. It scanned every ship down to the molecular level. In the time it took for a heart to beat twice. Thyrus felt that small feeling again. Uncertainty, but stronger now. Can we track it? No, Commander. We do not understand how it moved. We cannot follow what we cannot understand. Thyrus dismissed his analysts. He stood alone on his bridge, looking out at the stars. For 12,000 years, the hegemony had been the hunter. They had found primitive species on isolated worlds. They had taken what they wanted. They had never faced consequences. Now something had found them. Something that moved in ways they could not follow. Something that watched from shadows they could not see. Something that knew everything about them, while they knew nothing about it. In the deepest part of his mind, in the place where instinct lived, Fleet Commander Thyrus understood the truth. The hegemony had made an enemy, and this enemy was not like the others. This enemy had been watching, learning, preparing, and now it was ready. Across the galaxy, in places the hegemony did not know existed, humanity's scattered fleets received their orders. The reconnaissance was complete. The target was confirmed. The enemy was exactly as weak as they had hoped. Admiral Elena Vasquez read the intelligence report in her command chamber aboard the Retribution. 300 years of preparation. 300 years of patience. 300 years of cold, burning rage. The ones who had taken New Eden would face justice. The ones who had allowed it would face consequence. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 months passed after the strange ship vanished. The High Council decided the incident was over. Some unknown species had tried to frighten them and failed. Life in the hegemony returned to normal. Ships traveled between worlds. Trade continued. The conquered species served their masters as they always had. Then the frontier. Systems went dark. It started with a military outpost on the edge of hegemony space. One moment, the base was sending routine reports. The next moment, silence. Complete and total silence. No distress call. No warning. Just nothing. Fleet Commander Thyrus sent a patrol to investigate. The patrol found the outpost destroyed. Not damaged. Destroyed. Every building was rubble. Every ship was wreckage. Every soldier was dead. But there was no sign of battle. No blast marks from weapons fire. No debris from enemy vessels. It was as if the base had simply been erased. Before Thyrus could understand what had happened, another outpost went silent. Then another. Then 5 more. Across a span of 400 light years, 17 military installations died in a single night. The survivors were few. Most had been knocked unconscious by weapons that made no sound and left no wound. When they woke, they told stories that the Council refused to believe. Ships appeared from empty space, one survivor reported, his voice shaking. They did not come from hyperspace. They were simply there. Our weapons could not lock onto them. Our shields did not stop them. And their soldiers. He paused, struggling to find words. Their soldiers walked through walls. They moved through solid metal as if it was air. We could not fight what we could not touch. The Council dismissed the reports as the ravings of traumatized soldiers. But the attacks continued. More outposts fell. More ships vanished. The frontier was burning, and the hegemony could not stop it. Admiral Kethvorin was the greatest military commander the hegemony had ever produced. He had won 47 campaigns. He had never lost a battle. When the Council summoned him to lead the response, he accepted without hesitation. "Find these humans," Matriarch Sivellus commanded. "Destroy them." "And this," Kethvorin bowed. "It will be done." He gathered the largest fleet in hegemony history. 12,000 warships. 2 million soldiers. Enough firepower to burn a star. This force would find the enemy and crush them. There would be no mercy. There would be no negotiation. There would be only annihilation. While Kethvorin assembled his fleet, the hegemony's intelligence service finally found the truth. It took weeks of searching through ancient records. It took bribes and threats and interrogations. But eventually, the pieces came together. 300 years ago, a client species called the Mordith had conducted a raid on a world at the edge of the galaxy. The world was called New Eden by its inhabitants. The Mordith had classified them as primitives, a simple species with no space travel, no advanced weapons, no value except as labor. The Mordith had taken 40,000 of them. Men, women, children. They had packed them into cargo ships and carried them back to hegemony space. The primitives had been put to work in mining colonies on harsh worlds. They had dug ore from poisonous ground. They had breathed toxic air. They had died, one by one, until none remained. The hegemony had approved the raid. It was standard procedure. Primitive species had no rights. Their suffering did not matter. Their deaths were simply the cost of progress. But the species was not primitive. They had hidden their true capabilities. They had watched the Mordith ships depart with their stolen people. They had analyzed the technology left behind. And they had made a decision. They would follow. They would learn. They would prepare. And when they were ready, they would come for justice. For 300 years, humanity had worked in secret. They had studied the galaxy from hidden stations. They had captured Mordith ships and dissected their technology. They had improved upon it, changed it, made it something new. Something the galaxy had never seen. They had built ships that could fold space. They had created weapons that ignored shields. They had developed armor that could phase through matter. And they had trained soldiers who feared nothing, because they had already lost everything. When the intelligence report reached Matriarch Sivellus, she read it in silence. When she finished, she spoke a single word: fools. She did not mean the humans. She meant her own people, the Mordith, the council members who had approved the raid. Everyone who had thought that stealing 40,000 people would have no consequences. But she was a ruler. She could not show weakness. She could not admit fault. The only path forward was victory. Find the Mordith leaders, she ordered. Offer to surrender them to the humans in exchange for peace. Her advisors rushed to obey. They found the Mordith. They made the offer. And they received humanity's response. Admiral Vasquez sent the messages herself. Her voice was calm and cold. The 40,000 who were taken are dead. All of them. They died in your minds, breathing your poison, serving your greed. We do not want their bodies returned. We cannot bring them back. What we want is for you to understand what you have awakened. The message continued. The Mortith will face justice, but they are only the hand that struck the blow. You are the will that commanded it. You are the power that permitted it. You are the empire that profits from the suffering of the weak. And so you will face consequence. Cathvorn received word that his fleet was ready. 12,000 ships. The greatest force ever assembled. He gave the order to depart. We will find their staging ground, he told his officers. We will surround them. We will destroy them. This species, this humanity, will learn what it means to challenge the hegemony. His ships entered hyperspace. They followed intelligence reports to a system where human activity had been detected. They emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, weapons charged. Ready for battle. They found a single ship waiting for them. It was a diplomatic vessel. Small, unarmed. A message beacon activated as they approached. Admiral Cathvorn, the message said. Welcome. We expected you. While you have been traveling here, our real fleet has taken position around your homeworld. Zereth Prime is now under our guns. We suggest you return home quickly. Your matriarch will want to discuss terms. Cathvorn stared at the message. His great fleet, his 12,000 ships, had been sent to the wrong place. While he had been chasing shadows, the enemy had walked into the heart of the hegemony. He gave the order to return at maximum speed. His ships turned and plunged back into hyperspace. But he knew, with terrible certainty, that he was already too late. The hunters had become the hunted, and the hunt was almost over. Zereth Prime had never known fear. For 12,000 years, it had been the heart of an empire. Its cities stretched across continents. Its orbital stations formed a ring around the planet. Its defense grid could destroy any fleet foolish enough to approach. Now 700 human ships hung in orbit, and the defense grid was silent. The ships had appeared without warning. One moment, the sky was empty. The next moment, they were there. The defense stations had tried to respond. Their weapons had fired. Their missiles had launched. Nothing had worked. Human ships moved through space in ways that made targeting impossible. Human shields absorbed energy weapons like water absorbing light. Human countermeasures disabled missiles before they could detonate. Within 1 hour, every orbital defense was destroyed or disabled. Within 2 hours, the human fleet held perfect position around the planet. They had not fired on the surface. They had not killed civilians. They had simply taken control of the sky and waited. Matriarch Sibelius stood in the council chamber, surrounded by advisors who had no advice to give. She looked at the display showing the human fleet. 700 ships, each one capable of burning a city. And her greatest admiral was days away, chasing shadows at the edge of the galaxy. Open communication, she ordered. I will speak with their leader. The screen flickered. A human face appeared. A woman, perhaps 50 years old by human standards. Her hair was gray. Her eyes were dark. She wore a simple uniform with no decoration except a single symbol over her heart, a planet with a broken ring around it. I am Admiral Elena Vasquez, the woman said, commander of the human fleet. I speak for my species. Sibelius drew herself up to her full height. Even now, she would not show weakness. I am Matriarch Sibelius, ruler of the Zerothi hegemony. You have committed an act of war. Your ships surround my world. Your weapons threaten my people. What do you want? Vasquez did not smile. She did not threaten. She simply spoke, calm and clear. We want what we have always wanted. Justice, consequence, change. Explain yourself. 300 years ago, your client species raided our colony world. They took 40,000 of our people, men, women, children. They worked them to death in your mines. Every single one of them died. Mothers died holding their children. Fathers died reaching for their families. They died in darkness, in poison, in pain. And your empire approved it all. Sibelius hesitated. She had read the intelligence reports. She knew the truth. But admitting fault was not something rulers did. That was the Mordeth, she said. They acted on their own. The hegemony did not. The hegemony approved the raid, Vasquez interrupted. The hegemony provided the coordinates. The hegemony received 40% of the mining output produced by our people's labor. Your hands are not clean, matriarch. They are soaked in blood you chose not to see. Silence filled the council chamber. The advisors looked at their feet. Even Sibelius could not find words. What do you want? She finally asked again. Vasquez told her. The terms were simple. The terms were absolute. First, the hegemony would publicly acknowledge its role in the New Eden massacre. Every species in the galaxy would know what had been done. There would be no hiding, no excuses, no revision of history. Second, the Mordeth leadership would be surrendered to human custody. They would face trial for their crimes. Those found guilty would be executed. This was not negotiable. Third, the practice of primitive acquisition would end forever. No more raids on defenseless worlds. No more slavery disguised as resource gathering. No more species stolen from their homes to die in foreign mines. Any violation would be met with immediate and overwhelming response. Fourth, humanity would take a seat on the galactic concord as equals. They would have a voice in galactic affairs. They would be watched, feared, and respected. Sibelius listened. Her mind raced through possibilities. Surrender meant admitting weakness. Surrender meant the end of hegemony authority. Other species would see that the great empire could be challenged. Rebellions would spread. The order of 12,000 years would crumble. But the alternative was worse. 700 ships overhead. Her fleet days away. Her planet defenseless. I need time, she said, to consult with my council, to consider your terms. Vasquez nodded. You have 12 hours. But I warn you, matriarch, we have been patient for 300 years. Our patience is not infinite. The communication ended. Sibelius turned to her council. The hardliners spoke first. We cannot surrender, Admiral Thyros argued. If we bow to these primitives, every subject species will rise against us. The empire will fall. We must fight. With what forces? Another counselor asked. Our fleet is not here. Our defenses are destroyed. We cannot fight. Then we delay. We negotiate. We wait for Kethvoran to return. His 12,000 ships will crush this human fleet. Sibelius considered. It was a risk, but it might work. If she could keep the humans talking long enough for Kethvoran to arrive. Send a secret message to Admiral Kethvoran, she ordered. Tell him to return at maximum speed. Tell him to attack without warning when he arrives. We will keep the humans distracted with negotiation. The order was sent. The council prepared for a long night of pretend diplomacy. But in orbit, aboard the Retribution, Admiral Vasquez received a copy of the secret message before it even reached Kethvoran's fleet. Human intelligence had infiltrated Zirathi communication networks years ago. Every order, every message, every secret was an open book. Vasquez read the message. She felt something close to disappointment. She had hoped the Zirathi would choose differently. She had hoped they would understand that the old ways were over. But they had not learned. They still believed they could win through tricks and force. They still believed humanity was just another enemy to be crushed. She opened a channel to her fleet. "The Zirathi have chosen war," she said. "They believe Kethvorn's fleet will save them. They are wrong. Prepare Operation Consequence. When their fleet arrives, we will show the galaxy what happens to those who refuse to learn." Then she opened a channel to the council chamber. Sibelius answered, her face composed, ready for negotiation. "I have good news," Vasquez said. "We accept your request for extended negotiation. Take all the time you need. In the meantime, we will broadcast something to the galaxy. A demonstration of what happens next." "What demonstration?" Sibelius asked. Vasquez smiled. It was not a kind smile. "You will see. The whole galaxy will see. And then you will understand why negotiation was always your only choice." The transmission ended. Sibelius stared at the blank screen. In the sky above Zirith Prime, the human ships waited. And across the galaxy, every species with eyes turned to watch what would happen next. Admiral Kethvorn's fleet emerged from hyperspace like a storm breaking over a calm sea. 12,000 warships. The greatest force the hegemony had ever assembled. Enough firepower to burn worlds, to shatter moons, to end civilizations. Kethvorn stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Wrath, and studied his displays. The human fleet was still in orbit around Zirith Prime. 700 ships against his 12,000. The math was simple. Victory was certain. "All ships, attack formation," he ordered. "Target the human vessels. Fire at will." His fleet spread across space in perfect formation. Weapons charged. Shields raised. Millions of soldiers prepared for battle. This was the moment the hegemony had waited for. This was the moment humanity would learn its place. Then the trap closed. They came from everywhere. From behind asteroid fields. From inside gas clouds. From places where sensors showed nothing at all. Human ships appeared in the thousands, surrounding Kethvorn's fleet in every direction. But these were not ordinary ships. These were the weapons humanity had spent 3 centuries building. The Voidbreaker dreadnoughts struck first. They were massive vessels, each one nearly a mile long, and they carried weapons that had never existed before. Reality itself twisted around them. Space folded and tore. Zirathi ships were pulled into pocket dimensions that collapsed in on themselves, crushing vessels into balls of metal no larger than a human fist. Kethvorn watched 300 of his ships die in the first minute. He had never seen weapons like this. His tactical officers had no answers. His defensive systems had no response. "Focus fire on the large vessels," he commanded. "Destroy those dreadnoughts." His ships turned their weapons on the Voidbreakers. Thousands of energy beams struck their shields. Missiles by the hundreds detonated against their hulls. The dreadnoughts did not care. Their shields absorbed energy like a black hole absorbs light. Their hulls were made of materials that did not exist in any hegemony database. They continued their work, tearing reality apart, destroying everything in their path. Then came the swarm carriers. Each carrier released millions of small craft. Not ships' devices. Autonomous weapons guided by artificial minds that learned and adapted faster than any organic brain. They moved through the Zirathi fleet like insects through a garden. They found weaknesses. They exploited gaps. They burrowed through armor and detonated inside reactor cores. Kethvorn watched his displays turn red. Ship after ship went dark. His fleet was being eaten alive by enemies too small to target, too fast to hit, too numerous to count. "Fall back," he ordered. "All ships, fall back to defensive positions." But there was nowhere to fall back to. The human fleet surrounded them completely. Every direction was death. Every escape route was closed, And then the boarding parties arrived. Human marines in sealed armor launched from fast attack ships. They crossed the void in seconds, propelled by systems that defied physics. They struck the hulls of Zerathi capital ships and walked through them. Their armor could phase through solid matter, a technology the hegemony had always believed was impossible. The Marines moved through corridors like ghosts. They appeared inside command centers. They materialized in reactor rooms. They disabled ships from within, killing with precision, taking control with efficiency that spoke of centuries of preparation. The battle lasted 4 hours. When ended, 11,000 Zerathi vessels were destroyed or captured. Cat Vorn's flagship was among the captured. Human Marines had walked through his bridge walls and disabled his entire command staff before anyone could react. Human losses: 23 ships. Cat Vorn was brought before Admiral Chen Wei, commander of the ambush fleet. Chen Wei was an older man with tired eyes and a calm voice. He did not gloat. He did not threaten. He simply looked at the greatest military commander in hegemony history with something that might have been pity. "How?" Cat Vorn asked. It was the only word he could manage. How did primitives become this? Chen Wei considered the question. When he answered, his voice was quiet. "We have always been at war. Not with you, with ourselves. With nature. With the universe itself. Humans fight. It is what we are. We fight disease. We fight death. We fight the cold void of space that wants us dead. We never stop. We never rest. We never give up." He paused, looking past Kethvorin at something far away. When your Mordith came to our colony, they saw primitives. Simple people on a simple world. They did not understand that we were already warriors. They did not understand that taking our people was like taking a sword from a soldier. The soldier does not forget. The soldier does not forgive. The soldier waits and watches and prepares. 300 years, Kethvorin whispered. You waited 300 years. We are patient when we need to be. We are relentless when we need to be. We are whatever we need to be to survive. Your empire has ruled through fear for 12,000 years. You forgot that fear is a blade with 2 edges. You made species afraid of you, but you never learned to be afraid yourself. Chen Wei smiled, but there was no joy in it. Today you learned. Across the galaxy, every species watched the battle's broadcast. The hegemony had transmitted it live, expecting to show humanity's destruction. Instead, they showed the galaxy that the Empire could bleed, that the Empire could fall, that the hunters could become the hunted. On a dozen worlds, conquered species began to whisper. The Valkyries spoke of resistance. The Thornax discussed rebellion. The Morthini remembered their ancient freedom and wondered if it could be regained. The old order was cracking. The chains of 12,000 years were beginning to break. On Zereth Prime, Matriarch Sivellus watched the final moments of the battle in silence. Her advisors screamed for action. They demanded a last stand. They called for weapons of mass destruction for final strikes, for anything that might salvage their pride. Sivellus raised her hand. The room fell silent. She reached for her ceremonial blade, a weapon that had been passed down through 10,000 years of hegemony rule. It was the symbol of their power, the mark of their authority, the proof of their supremacy. She set it on the table. Contact the humans, she said. Her voice was steady. Her eyes were clear. Tell them we accept their terms. All of them, unconditionally. Her advisors stared in shock. Some protested. Some wept. Some simply stood frozen, unable to accept what they were witnessing. But Sivellus had seen the truth. She had watched 12,000 ships die in 4 hours. She had seen weapons that twisted reality itself. She had witnessed the end of everything she had known. The hegemony was not destroyed. Not yet, but its supremacy was over. Its fear was broken. Its rule was ending. And in its place, something new was being born. Humanity had come for justice. And justice would be done. 1 year had passed since the battle that changed everything. The galaxy was not the same. It would never be the same again. The Treaty of Consequence was signed on neutral ground, a space station that orbited no world and owed loyalty to no empire. Representatives from every species in the galaxy watched as Matriarch Savelis placed her mark beside Admiral Vasquez's signature. The document was simple, but its meaning was vast. The hegemony acknowledged its role in the destruction of New Eden. The words were broadcast across every world, translated into every language, heard by every ear. For the first time in 12,000 years, the great empire admitted fault. The great empire bowed its head. The Mortith faced trial. Their leaders were brought before human judges in human courts. The evidence was overwhelming. Recordings from Mortith ships showed the raid on New Eden. Reports from mining colonies documented the deaths of 40,000 innocent people. Testimonies from survivors described the cruelty, the suffering, the complete disregard for human life. The guilty were executed, not in anger, not in hatred, simply in justice. When the sentences were carried out, humanity did not celebrate. They simply recorded the names of the dead in a memorial that would stand forever, carved into the surface of a moon that orbited the ruins of New Eden. The practice of primitive acquisition ended. The hegemony issued decrees forbidding raids on pre-spaceflight worlds. Client species were warned that any violation would bring immediate response. And everyone knew that immediate response now meant humanity, and humanity did not make empty threats. The Galactic Concord gained a new member. Humanity took its seat among the ruling powers of the galaxy, not as juniors, not as newcomers to be ignored and dismissed. They sat as equals, and no one questioned their right to be there. Other species came to humanity with requests. The Valkyrie, who had been conquered 3,000 years ago, asked for alliance. The Thornax, whose world had been stripped of resources, asked for protection. The Mortheni, who had almost forgotten what freedom meant, asked for guidance. Humanity listened. They did not rush to make promises. They had learned in their 3 centuries of watching that the galaxy was complicated. Trust had to be earned. Alliances had to be built slowly. But they did not turn anyone away. Admiral Vasquez retired from active service. She had done what she set out to do. The colony of New Eden was avenged. The empire that had allowed its destruction was humbled. Justice had been served. Before she departed, a Zirathi historian asked her a question. He was young, by Zirathi standards, barely 200 years old. He had grown up in the shadow of the hegemony's power. He had been taught that his species was supreme, that other beings existed only to serve. Now he was trying to understand a new universe. "What is your philosophy?" he asked. "Your species appeared from nothing. You defeated the greatest military force in the galaxy. You could have destroyed us. You could have taken our worlds, enslaved our people, done to us what we did to so many others. But you did not. Why?" Vasquez thought for a long moment. When she answered, her voice was soft. "We do not believe we are special. We do not believe we are chosen by some higher power. We do not believe the universe owes us anything. We only believe that when someone hurts us, we have the right and the responsibility to make sure it never happens again." To anyone, the historian did not fully understand. But he wrote down her words, and in the years that followed, scholars across the galaxy would debate their meaning. The human exploration vessel New Horizon launched from Earth on a mission that would last decades. Aboard were diplomats, scientists, soldiers, and teachers. Their destination was the Galactic Rim, the distant edges of known space, where primitive species still lived on isolated worlds, unaware of the empires that surrounded them. Their mission was simple: find these species before anyone else did. Offer them knowledge. Offer them protection. Offer them a choice that the colony of New Eden never had. Captain David Chun stood on the bridge as the ship entered hyperspace. He was the great-grandson of Admiral Chen Wei, who led the ambush that broke the hegemony's fleet. He carried his ancestors' name and his ancestors' burden. "What will we tell them?" his first officer asked. "These primitive species we're searching for. What will we say when we find them?" Chun considered the question. "We will tell them the truth. The galaxy is dangerous. There are powers out there that see them as resources to be exploited, not people to be respected. We will offer them our help. We will offer them our knowledge. And we will offer them our promise." "What promise?" "That they are not alone. That someone in the dark is watching over them. That if anyone tries to hurt them, that someone will answer." The new horizon vanished into hyperspace, bound for the unknown edges of the galaxy. Behind it, a new era was beginning. On 100 worlds, children looked up at the stars for the first time without fear. They had grown up hearing stories of the great empires and their terrible power. They had been taught that the strong devoured the weak, that the universe was cruel, that hope was foolish. Now they heard different stories. Stories of a species that had been wronged and had risen to demand justice. Stories of an empire that had been humbled. Stories of a galaxy that was changing. The Zirathi called this era the Age of Reckoning. They taught their children that actions had consequences, that power was not permission, that even the mightiest could fall. Humanity did not give the era a special name. When asked about it, they simply shrugged and said it was another chapter in their long history. They had faced challenges before. They had overcome them before. They would face new challenges in the future and overcome those too. It was simply what they did. In the memorial on New Eden's moon, 40,000 names were carved in stone. They were farmers and teachers, children and elders, dreamers and builders. They had lived simple lives on a simple world. They had not asked for war. They had not asked for suffering. They had only asked to be left in peace. They had not received that peace, but their descendants had ensured that their sacrifice meant something, that their deaths were not forgotten, that the galaxy learned at last that no species, no matter how small, no matter how isolated, no matter how primitive they appeared, was without value. The stars no longer belonged only to the powerful. The stars belonged to everyone who had the courage to reach for them. And somewhere in the endless dark, aboard a ship bound for the edge of everything, humanity continued its journey. Not as conquerors, not as rulers, simply as people who had learned, through pain and loss and 3 centuries of cold determination, that the universe was exactly as kind as they chose to make it. They chose kindness. They chose justice. They chose consequence. And the galaxy would never forget.